discussions on important aspects about gender equality or the need for gender equality when it comes to the participation of women in science. So we have 4 speakers. Each one of them will be speaking for 15 minutes with us, giving different opinions and aspects, looking at the theme from different viewpoints. And then after this, we're going to open the panel for discussion, and you're very welcome to contribute with your experiences or to make your questions, to pose discussions, whatever you feel like that can contribute to our session. So first, I would like to call the president of SBP-MAT, our Monica Cota. I would like to say it's an honor for us that this is the first time a woman is the president of SBP-MAT. And we also have Professor Deborah Menezes here, who is the first woman elected for the Brazilian Physics Society presidency also. So I'm very glad, very proud of you too, because you definitely represent all of us. So Monica, please.
Andrea, I just want to welcome everybody here to the session. We have 3 women in directors board, so it's not only me, but also have Andrea and Ieda, who is hiding behind the camera now. And we are part of the directors board of the Brazilian MRS, so we are very proud to be almost 50%, right, Andrea? We are 7, so there's no way. So that's why our meeting always has had a large attendance of female students and researchers, professors. So we wanted to bring this discussion to our meeting, which is our major forum of the community of material science in Brazil, and also bringing other points of views from different regions to see how, as we mentioned, geography and race also bias our distribution and our representation in science. So Andrea, you're the boss. Thank you.
Okay, so without any further delay, I would like to welcome Professor Deborah Menezes. Deborah, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I ask you to please introduce yourself to the public and then start your presentation.
So hello, good evening. Thank you very much, Andrea and Monica, for the nice invitation. It's very good to be here with you. So I will start sharing my screen. If anything goes wrong, please let me know, because as soon as I start running it, I won't be able to see you. But if there is something wrong, please let me know, okay?
Perfect. We can see you well.
Great. So I'm going to talk about why are female scientists invisible. And Andrea asked me to introduce myself. So I'll start saying that I was a member of the working group on gender issues for almost 5 years. And this group is linked to the Brazilian Physical Society. And while I was doing this work with other members, we collected many data and we published a few papers. And I'm going to present some of this, some of the conclusions we've reached and some of our results. So I'm also the coordinator of a YouTube channel called Women in Sciences. And the aim of this channel is to fight gender stereotype and show that women are really capable of doing very good science. But we also have a playlist that is motivational for girls and women. So you are all invited to take a look. All videos are in Portuguese because we've realized that there isn't much material in Portuguese, although there are lots of things in English and Spanish. But if you do not understand Portuguese, you can use the platform subtitles. So one of the videos is, well, she asked me to introduce myself. So instead of saying I did this and that in physics, I'm going to say what I do that is not related to physics. So one of our films claims that everyone has a Leila Diniz inside us, and Leila Diniz was really a very modern and free woman who lived in Brazil in the 60s. And so this is my Leila Diniz side. I like to dance classic ballet. And when I'm not connected, somehow I'm either on the water or in the water. So I'm really very connected to the sea and beaches and things like that. So now let's go to our subject, and I will start showing or talking about one of another videos of my channel that was produced by Professor Karin Calaza, and it's about a stereotype threat. So she shows lots of examples and collects lots of studies, but one that's very striking is that the self-confidence of young girls changes very early in their lives. So intelligent people are associated with people of the same gender when they are 5, but then the very same girls associate a very clever and smart person to a man when they are 7. So something very disturbing happens when these students go to the formal school, when formal education starts and they start learning how to write properly. And this is the result of something that society imposes to these girls. But we have to fight gender stereotype all the time, even in academy. So this is an article that was published last year in November. And it was very much criticized because of methodological problems. And the claims of the authors were that women and men at the universities should look for mentorship by men, mostly, because men are more connected, they have better relations. So the result in their career would be better if these persons were supervised by men. So there was this letter complaining to the editors, and despite also methodological problems that were noticed by the referees, the paper was published anyway. And then lots of complaints. You could see people talking about this paper in different communities. And finally, after 1 month, the paper was finally retracted. Another thing that Karin Calaza claims is that possible reasons for the gender stereotype are, you know, these Disneyland films that show these beautiful princesses that only have to be very beautiful and wait for the enchanted prince to come and rescue them, and then they are going to be happy forever. We all know that the lives of princesses are not that glamorous. We don't have to look at Lady Di, but even if we look before that, the princesses were kind of merchandise that were traded among different families, in nobility families, so very tough life. Also, children toys sometimes are a problem because they are directed to different skills. So men are always required to do things that make them to think and to compete, while women are treated in a different way. And so there is a lack of social stimuli. So another problem are the implicit biases. And again, if you look at this movie, we're going to see lots of different studies. But one that's really calls the attention is that some fake CVs were produced and they were delivered in different places. And whenever the two CVs were competing, the man's CV was the only one, that was the one that was chosen. And whenever both of them were chosen, the salaries of the men were always higher. So there is this implicit biases that also regulate parts of our social lives. And this goes up to the Nobel Prizes. This is an article that was published in 2018. And the red dots are related to female Nobel laureates and the blue ones to male. So some years after that, now in 2021, the situation is slightly different. So 5 women got the Nobel Prize in Physics out of 216 people, and 7 women got it in chemistry out of 186 men. Of course, we know we are minority in these areas, but not that small minority. So this is almost invisible. And then there is the scissors effect. And what is it? Now, it's an effect that cuts women from the possibility of reaching higher ranks in their professional or academic life. And it starts very early. So we've studied, for instance, the medals obtained by girls and boys in the Brazilian Physics Olympiads. And you can look, and you can already see the graph, this scissor shape. So if we show the percentage of the medals within 5 years, so it's written in Portuguese, but they come in sequence, and you see that while the percentage of boys gaining medals increase, the percentage of girls decrease systematically as the years go by. And then this is also another study that I did, and I looked at data of my institution, the Federal University of Santa Catarina, and I looked at incomers and graduates, undergraduates and graduate students, and you see the scissors effect both if you look at this as the time goes by. So the first 2 columns refer to undergrads and the other 2 to grads. And then you see that the blue numbers related to women decrease. So while around 23% starts undergraduate studies, only 15 start the doctorate. And if we compare also the incomers with the ones that graduate, we also see the same effect. So this is also called leaky pipeline by some people, that women are leaking. Of course, it also happens to men, but if we look at the data, it's always more strong if we look at the numbers related to women. Then I also would like to show you this study. I don't expect you to read any of these dots because they are really too small, but this was a work that studies the gender gap. And if you look from bottom to top, if you could see, you would see that the third one is physics. And the very last one is finance. And the third one, the third worst one is physics. So only 13% of women appear as last authors, normally dedicated to supervisors and mentors. And it would take 258 years until the generation of senior physicists comes within 5% of parity with men. So this is 258 years if we don't do anything, if we just let things happen. Well, talking about invisible women, there is also this Matilda effect that when men and women work together, most of the time men obtain the credit for the major discoveries and major results. And this is shown in this film, nicely hidden figures. I like this movie very much. And many people didn't know anything about these women until the film became available, not many years ago. So this is a famous picture. I think that everybody that works in physics, chemistry, or probably material sciences know of many of those famous men. But what I want to show is something that has also been shown in many conferences. That's Marie Curie, who is the only woman among all those famous scientists. So you can say, wow, but this is 1927. Yes, but this is 2019. And the situation seems to be normal. Is it normal? Has it been normalized that we are just so few called to talk? So this is a conference in 2019 organized by the Indian Physical Society, and I was the only woman. These very beautiful young ladies on the right-hand side are the secretaries. So the last thing I want to show is one study that shows the effect of parenthood on the earnings of men and women after they have children. So on the left-hand side, you see what happens to the earnings of women after their first child is born. So you see that there is a drastic decrease in salary, and then afterwards it's recovered a little bit, but it never reaches the same salary as women who did not have children. But what happens to men? Ta-da! Nothing. So it seems that children just affect the lives of women. So there is something very weird about that we hope changes. So I don't have much time. I will conclude, remembering that sexism is a structural problem. It affects the relation among people. It affects the social roles played by them. It's present everywhere. It's present in religion. It's present in Freemasonry. And it's even present when we look at the behavior of some women who reproduce some words, some sentences, some behaviors that do not contribute to anybody, not even to themselves. We have very few women in science and technology policy-making positions. And of course, this is a fact. And then professional success is not facilitated for the younger generations. But of course, there are solutions. For everything, there is a solution. So we have to work work on encouragement, mentorship, practical experience, to make role models more visible and to show that intellectual equality between men and women is a reality. After that, maybe we have to keep in mind that talking about those things is not a bad thing, because more people will listen and will realize what happens. And then some affirmative actions can also be introduced by societies, for instance. So at the Brazilian Physical Society, there are 6 directors and we are 50%. So 3 women and 3 men, and another woman is here, Katamari Rosa, she's also going to talk to us. And we have approved a commission that's called JEDI, for Justice, Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion. And we hope that JEDI is going to do a very nice work in the next years. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Deborah, for raising these important points. And now I would like to welcome Marisa.
Hello, let me get, let's see. Oh, there's my little girl. All right. So thank you all for having me today. Let me get this on full screen. Hopefully, there we go. Can you see just one slide or 2? I'm never sure what this.
2 slides.
2 slides, okay. Let's see, there, is that better? Just one now? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, and I just wanted to say too, congratulations on having female leaders. That's an amazing accomplishment. We're having the same thing with my professional society, ASM International, and we have a woman president now and a woman vice president coming in. So congratulations to you all. It's a great accomplishment. So today I wanted to talk to you all about inequity in the workplace, and then the even bigger challenges that come during a pandemic, just some of my thoughts on this. A quick introduction for me, this is myself and my daughter. I went to the Colorado School of Mines, got my PhD in metallurgy and materials engineering. I currently work at the Savannah River National Laboratory in South Carolina. As you can see here, and probably have seen on the video, I have my daughter and my husband, 2 dogs that you will probably hear at some point in this. And the reason why, one of the reasons why I'm talking to you all today is that we were able to talk with Monica, the president of my society, ASM, was able to talk with Monica and Andrea and able to arrange this. And then I am the chair of the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Awareness Committee. And I'll talk to you about some of the efforts that we're doing with that. Then I'm also involved in education outreach quite a bit, because I believe it's very important to do outreach, especially in science and technology, to young women and children, to get them engaged as soon as possible. So let's talk about some of the inequity in the workplace that we face even before the pandemic happens. So as you can see on the side here, there's the video or a picture of 3 people watching a baseball game. This is the ideal world, right? That everybody that wants to see the baseball game can see the baseball game. However, that's not really reality. Usually there's some sort of barrier put in place that prevents us from doing the thing we want to do, whether it's our gender, whether it's our race, whether it's our opportunity for school, etc. And so equality is usually a term that's put out a lot, and it's based on the notion that you give everybody the same tools, and therefore they should be able to do what they need to do. However, if you give the tall person a stool, they can still see better than they would have been able to anyway, and the short person can't see at all. And then if we talk about equity, equity is the premise that the tools are tailored for the person that needs them. So one thing we can think about with this, especially with women, women in the workplace, working moms, what tools can we give them to help them succeed that maybe men don't need? So women might need a couple extra boxes, maybe a little bit more flexible time, a little bit more, flexible of when they can work, when acceptance of they might have to telework more than others, where men might not need that amount of help. Then finally, the other thing that really comes to mind is that this is generally reality. Usually we give people that don't need help more help than we give the people that actually do. And sometimes we hinder the people that really need the help even more. So really, what does this mean for our professional societies or even just women in the workplace? Just some graphics and things to think about as we go forward with our discussion. So this is how we start, kind of in the workplace, even before the pandemic hits. Women are usually the primary caregiver, or at least viewed as the primary caregiver. So for example, today, my daughter was in preschool. I got the call from daycare that she is now quarantined because a fellow student tested positive for COVID. So I got the call. However, both my husband's and I's phone numbers are on the list. They could have called him just as easy, but I'm the mom, so I get the call. Usually we're reviewed as the ones responsible for all the housework. We have to do our jobs and do all the cleanup. And a lot of times this is even worse. If a woman is teleworking and her partner doesn't, these burdens are usually put more on the person that's at home. And in general, I think as in the talk that we just heard, women, for some reason, aren't seen as smart as their male colleagues. There's this inherent sexism that women's voices aren't heard. And that happened even before the pandemic, where I felt like, I don't know how many times I would sit in a conference and discussing or a meeting, and I would say something and people would generally get ignored. And then 2 minutes later, my male colleague says the same thing. And it's like, oh, that's a great idea. Even though we have the same experience, the same education, and it gets really frustrating. And I think, some of the things that was just said previously, this statistic at the bottom is a really powerful thing. If you have to leave the workforce now for whatever reason, even before the pandemic, and then want to return, you're going to receive even less pay than if you would have stayed in the workforce or with somebody else that did stay. So one of the things when I was talking with some colleagues about this, one of my colleagues really kind of gave a good example that I wanted to share with you all. She said, that the Suez Canal blockage, I don't know however many of you remember this, that happened back in March, where this large tanker ship got stuck sideways in the canal and blocked the shipping passage for at least 6 days. And that caused huge amounts of worldwide problems and impacts. And so the Suez Canal runs at 100% capacity all the time. there is no downtime for that canal. And I think women are the same way, especially women in the workplace. And if you're a mom, it's even more, where we're expected to be at 100% capacity all the time. And if anything gets in that way, there's impacts that will be felt for a long, long time. And so the impacts of the Suez Canal are still being felt. And I believe that women working in the pandemic, whether or not you have kids, and maybe even more so if you have kids, we're being impacted a lot in several different ways. And it will take a long time to recover. And so I think maybe even that 258-year statistic that was just said may get even longer, which is really scary and really sad. So another statistic here is that a study of 40,000 employees found that 25% of women were considering leaving the working force or slowing down their careers because of the pandemic. And a lot of that was due to childcare. And women were more likely than men to not work in order to take care of the children. So what are all these effects of all the teleworking? I know in my position right now, or at my job, we have a really high rate of COVID in my state. And the US, as I'm sure you've probably heard, is not doing well currently with the pandemic. We're getting a lot of COVID positive rates or people right now. And so we're all being told to maximize telework. So how does that affect women scientists? You know, we want to be in the lab. We want to be doing experiments. And being told to do maximum telework can be good for some things, you know, writing reports, getting your papers out. But even if you have work that can be done at home, there's a lot of impact, you know, from all the mental load that you have to share and the limited space that you're in and the limited interactions that you have with your colleagues. A lot of what scientists do is converse with others and share ideas. And so that's being really limited. And especially when, you know, conferences like these are being held virtually, there's some really good effects of virtual conferences. Like I get to talk to you all today. I probably wouldn't have been able to do that if it was held in person. But the networking opportunities aren't as good. You don't have those coffee breaks that you can chat, you know, with other colleagues and follow up on their presentations and things. And that's really affecting scientific production. You know, the other part is just if you can be in the lab and doing work, there's shortages on supplies. There can be funding shortages because businesses aren't prioritizing R&D, or your government may be trying to put money towards other things that they deem more important at the moment. And so it's hard to continue in scientific endeavors. I actually was just able to hire a woman that had had a very good career in industry doing research and development for a prominent ceramics company. And they just had to cut all of their R&D department because of the pandemic. They weren't having as much influx of work and of supply, so they had to cut R&D in order to stay afloat. So she, after 25 years of a really strong career, couldn't work anymore. And so she was able to hire in with us, but there's several people out there that are struggling to find jobs. So finally, I wanted to share with you all the professional society that I'm a part of. It's ASM International. We're one of the premier materials societies throughout the world. We're primarily based in America, but we have chapters in Canada, India, and all over the world. And so what are we doing for diversity and inclusion efforts to try to help battle some of these problems that we're seeing in the pandemic and even before? So we have Diversity and Equity Inclusion Task Force, where we're working with our president and our board of directors to really come up with ways to engage a variety of people that normally we don't see. Where a lot of our membership are older white males. And so how do we change our messaging and engage people that might not see themselves in that type of community. And with that, we're trying to get more women involved in the society, make sure that they're promoted. They have good ideas. We have good ideas. Let's promote them, trying to get them into higher levels. So you do see that representation. We are working with other societies such as yours to share ideas and lessons learned and best practices so that we can all try to help each other, because ultimately we're all in this together and we all need to try to help each other succeed. We have the idea committee, like I told you, that I'm leading that. And we also have several affiliate societies that that work with us and have their own initiatives for diversity and equity. And we're sharing lessons learned and best practices, webinars, a variety of different things that we're trying to do to increase diversity, inclusion, and representation so that we can help each other grow and get more of the diversity across the board. One of the challenges that we're trying to battle is, the conferences that we do have. Can we change some of the timing of it so that you can get more students involved? Oh, there's my dogs. So you can get more students involved and some more women with families and things like that. And that was pretty much where I'm at. It was going to end anyway, but since the dogs are barking, I'll go ahead and pass it on. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Marisa. And now I would like to invite Professor Katamari, please.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Let me share my screen. Okay, well, so you can hear me well? Well, thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm Katamari, so doing this brief introduction about myself. I'm Katamari, and as Deborah mentioned, I'm also the Brazilian Physical Society. And I have been working with physics education research, and specifically working with the intersections of race, gender, sexuality in physics education. So when invited to this roundtable, I thought about bringing a specific piece of theory that may help us discuss and may contribute to the conversation about how scientific underrepresentation is aggravated by race and geographic distribution. Because I think it's interesting for us to gather some theoretical lenses, to improve this discussion. And as Deborah mentioned, some of these reasons, we know the numbers, and it's not news that we have few women in science, we have few people of color in science, but the reasons for that, they are structural reasons. So we need to face those structural problems. And we have developed over time several theoretical frameworks that can help us deal with that. So I decided to bring one here, so maybe it can help us talk a little bit about that. So critical race theory. I also have been working with critical race theory and decolonial perspectives. Today I'm going to focus only on CRT for short. And I'm having these slides here mostly to help me, with a few keywords, but I really want for us to have some time to talk after this talk. So I'm going to prioritize that for us to have a conversation. And so what is critical race theory? if we go back to the civil rights movement in the United States, we think about how Black scholars at the time, they have sort of gain is not really the word, but they conquer several rights. But those rights, they started to diminish over time, and they realized things they used to do, such as protests and marches, they were not effective anymore. And then they started to discuss that things they used to do during the civil rights movements, they are not being useful anymore. And they were starting also to be concerned on how critical movements from the time, they were not addressing race issues properly. So we are talking about scholars here, and then specifically about people that were in the legal field. So we are talking about legal scholars, people who are in law, and people such as Derek Bell and Alan Freeman are thought to be the first ones that started paving the ways for what we today call critical race theory. We don't have CRT is not a theory that has one person who created, or that there isn't a definition of what it is. It's a set of ideas and notions and concepts that are shared among some scholars. And it started in the legal field with people like Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw. And they were dissidents from this critical theorists. So some of the concepts, some of these key ideas that most of the people who subscribe themselves as critical race theorists, we can say that are the permanence of races, which means recognizing that races is something that is prevalent in society. So it exists. It's not something that's aberrant. It's not something that sometimes it happens in society. It's prevalent, it's foundational, and it's something that we call institutional racism. It makes the foundation of our institutions. And the other thing is recognizing white supremacy is pervasive in society. So this is something that is an idea that's part of CRT. Another idea that's part of CRT is intersectionality. And intersectionality is a term that has been, people are using a lot lately. But they are also people are using it very loosely sometimes. And intersectionality talks about how race intersects with other social identities and how this intersection produces complex combinations of power, advantages, and disadvantages. So intersectionality is not simply the combination of oppressions. Race is in the centrality of intersectionality. And that's an important thing. And interest convergence. So I chose those three key ideas for tonight, but there are others that are important, such as whiteness as property, but I'm not going to talk about them. There are several, and I'm going to leave later some references that people can look if they are interested to see more about CRT. But these three, I think they can help us the conversation tonight. So interest convergence is another very interesting concept because it says that actions and policies that benefit the Black population are only obtained when also benefiting white people. And I like very much when I see that in the example that crafted this idea. So that was from its idea that came from Derek Bell, and he uses the case of so we think civil war, civil rights movement, and you have to think about the history of the United States and how the schools, for example, when you have the Jim Crow era and you have the schools that were segregated. So you had this idea, this notion that, separated but equal. The idea that Black people and white people, this equal. They could have things equal. So you could have universities for Black people, and for white people, they were not equal, of course, but you could have for both. And then at some point, you start having desegregated schools. And then you have a case. And remember, again, CRT comes from legal scholars, the legal field. And then you have this case that is dealing with a desegregated school. And so this thing about, okay, can white kids study with Black kids? That's a problem. But the idea of a United States that has a segregation is really not looking good internationally. So it's also a problem economically for the United States, for international relations. So at some point, it's bad for the states to have this policy. And then the case, when you look at Brown versus Board of Education, which is this case that is looking if this school can have kids, white and Black kids together, if this Black kid can study in the school. And then, okay, so now this kid can go to this school, and the United States, look at this country, how beautiful it is. Now the schools are desegregated. It looks like it's a good thing that's being done for Black people. It's a beneficial thing, a beneficial policy for Black people. But in fact, it's something that is going to help more the United States in terms of how it's seen internationally than it's about the rights of Black people for having education, desegregated access to desegregated schools. So this idea that policies and things that benefit Black people only happen when they benefit Black people, it's something that, for me, it's one of those concepts that once you see it, you cannot unsee, because then I can see that in so many things, and I can see that in science and in academy all the time. But anyway, we can talk about that later, because just that I love this idea of interest convergence. And so racism here, when I'm talking about racism, I'm talking about the system of advantage and disadvantage that's based on race. And this system perpetuates advantages and privileges for white people and disadvantages for people of color. It's important to understand that unlike prejudice, which is related to preconceived notions and judgments made by individuals, racism does not rely on one person, but it's a set of cultural messages and institutional policies and practices, as well as the beliefs and actions of individuals. So it's not, and there's this great book also, Racism Without Racists, because it's not about the individual. And the benefit of receiving these advantages, even if not called for, or even without any prejudice involved, is understood as white privilege. Because this is another concept that it seems to be hard to grasp. People don't understand very well what white privilege is, and it's all connected. Because when we are talking in science and academy about underrepresented minorities or minoritized people, or white women in science, because that's the other thing. Most of the time when you're talking about women in science, we are talking about white women in science. So when we talk about women in science in general, without considering these intersections and without considering the white privilege associated with for white women, we continue to put people of color in disadvantage and continue to promote the system of disadvantage that based on race, which is racism. And CRT now, and why I decided to talk about CRT as well today. So I started talking a little bit about this context of when it started, because I think it's very important to understand where CRT comes from. Because that's it, CRT was born in the United States. It's rooted in its history. So we have to think, is it possible to think about CRT in other contexts, in other countries? How does that translate to other cultures? And I think it's important for us to think about CRT in other countries, is to think, how are race relations in these other countries? In which ways the way race are discussed, constructed, read in other places, they can be similar or dissimilar to the United States. And in Brazil, for example, we have several similarities to the ways that race and racism is constructed, like in the United States. We have this institutional racism as well. And we have white supremacy in Brazil all over the place, our institutions, and more, like daily, we have been seeing that now. We see the reflects of this white supremacy all the time that are combined with patriarchy. Those things are very much together. So it's important to see how those systems of oppression operate in our countries and see, well, maybe this theoretical lenses can be useful for our context as well.
Katamari,
I think that we need to.
Can we finish in 1 or 2 minutes? We are.
Yeah, I'm in 13 minutes now, so I think I have to.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. So I was saying that. So I think that one thing that's important is when we translate things to our countries is to make this translation, but considering our context. And so the other thing is that CRT goes beyond legal studies, and it's used and has been researched in other areas beyond the legal studies. And right now, CRT has been several attacks in the United States, and also as a consequence of the Black Lives Matter movement, it has been banned in several schools, in several states, in K through 12 schools. So it's something that is stirring a lot of in terms of race relations right now in the United States. And so if anyone wants to learn a little bit more, I have this reading suggestions, and I still have a few seconds from my 15 minutes, but I am done. Thank you.
Thank you, Katamari. And now I would like to welcome Silvina, Professor Silvina.
Yes, I am here. So let me share. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for the invitation. And my name is Silvina Ponce Dawson. I am a physicist based in Buenos Aires. And a little bit of my story is very closely tied with Brazil, because the person who invited me to look into women in physics was Marcia Barbosa from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. So, and she was the first chair of the Working Group on Women in Physics of the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics. And then I became chair of that working group as well. I was vice president with a gender champion duties of the IUPAP. And now I am acting as president designate of the International Union. Hopefully I will become president in 2023. And it's the second time that a woman is going to be president of the IUPAP, but it's the first time that someone from Latin America will be. So it's pretty challenging, let me tell you. So in this talk, I decided to put together some data that we collected with a project that the IUPAP was involved in, which is what we call the Gender Gap in Science project. That's the website. And this is a project that it's entitled The Gender Gap in Mathematics, Natural and Computational Sciences, How to Measure It, How to Reduce It. And it was funded by the International Science Council through the end of 2019, but the unions that took part in it was a collection of international unions that took part in the project, and we are still working together. So it had three main tasks. One was a global survey that was open in 2018 that collected about 34,000 responses from almost 160 countries. Then a study of publication patterns segregated by gender, and then a compilation of a database of good practices. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the survey. And so from the very beginning, the project had in mind the idea of bringing into different perspectives from different regions. In particular, the three regions where the International Science Council, then called it ICSU, had at the time. There was one in Africa, one in Asia Pacific, and the other one in Latin America. And so we had regional workshops at the beginning of the project in these three regions. Oops, let me see. Sometimes this thing stops moving. Oh. Let me see if I can go back. There. So this is from the regional workshop in Taiwan. This was in Latin America, was in Bogota. And then in South Africa was the other one. And one of the things that we discussed there was the questionnaire for the survey, tried to bring in the perspective of the regions. And so in Latin America, we already had a very active network of, it started as women in physics, but it also involved women from other disciplines. And we had different workshops, early career development workshops that we ran in different countries. We started in 2014 in Puebla, Mexico. The last one we had in person was in Sao Paulo. Katamari was there. She's the one here with the red, I don't know, handkerchief, I don't know, scarf, something. And so we put together a website where we collected what we've been doing. And we also published a book that is available for downloading from the website. And now we are trying to set up a new identity on the network that we call Witral. Witral is a word in Mapuche that means a place where you weave handcrafted things. And so we are weaving our knowledge. Anyway, and this is the images from the final report of the project that is available. You can download it from the website of the project, and you can also get it printed and delivered to you by regular post. Oh gosh, first, I don't know what's the problem with this. It goes back and forth working. Okay, so I guess it's that kind of introducing the things. Anyway, so let me give you a little bit of the data of the survey. And the data was analyzed splitting up the world into all these regions. Latin America was split up in two regions, basically. One is called Central America, the other one is South America. And it was distributed in a way that is called snowball sampling. So it doesn't represent the community. It mostly represents what people who answered the survey feel about the whole situation. And these are the numbers, but the analysis that were done, and these are the numbers according to disciplines. It was responded by people from the natural sciences and math and computer science. And there was also people from the history of science and other disciplines. And the analysis was based mostly on 20,000 responses and was done by the American Institute of Physics Statistical Research Center and was presented in Trieste. So these are kind of the conclusions of that study. You can go and see more details in the report. And so the only thing where the analysis of the responses didn't find significant differences between men and women was related to when they chose, women and men, they chose their field of interest. But then all other aspects that were analyzed, even if you accounted for any confounding factors, there were significant differences in the responses of men and women, and the experiences of the women who responded were usually less positive. So, for example, these are some data. Here they are divided by region: Africa, North America, Caribbean, Central America, etc. This is South America. And it's female and male. And when they are painted in gray, with here the different types of responses are with darker or lighter versions of gray, or green and orange. When they are painted with gray, it means that there is no significant difference between the responses of men and women. And when one of them is green and the other one is orange, they are. So this is about a career progression and children. And so in most regions, the experiences, particularly here, this is South America, this is North America, the experience of women with children, they said that they progressed more slowly than their colleagues. And then this is something that is responses saying whether your work or your career changed or not significantly because you had kids. And so the experience of male and female are quite different. For example, in South America, 51% of men said that their lives didn't change significantly, while only 24% of women who responded said that. So these are some data analyzed only over the responses from Latin America. This was done by Laura Merner. She presented that at the ICTP in Sao Paulo. And this is about interruptions while you are doing your PhD. And so whether you've had significant interruptions is slightly larger for female than male. And when you ask what's the reason, the main reasons for your interruptions, the main reason that women responded was pregnancy or child rearing, while for men, the most important reason or more prevalent reason to interrupt their studies was financial constraints. And then this is again whether that breaking your career or your studies affected how you advanced subsequently. And men report less frequently that has affected their careers than women. So this is about discrimination. And again, the different colors means that there is a very different perception between men and women. And you see that respondents indicating feeling discriminated in the assessment or evaluation is very low in men throughout the regions, and it's very high in women. And when you ask the other way around, whether you never experienced discrimination, then the percentages are reversed. And so these are significant differences everywhere. And going to Latin America and looking at what are the reasons for discrimination that are reported by respondents, gender is very large. I mean, people who say that they are, this is men, this is women and men. Orange is women and green is men. Very large, the fraction of women that say that they have been discriminated against because of gender and also because of age. And then the responses of men are different. Then sexual harassment, this is pretty different also between men and women, with many more women, a much larger fraction of women responding that they had they have known about the existence of sexual harassment. Not only that they encountered it themselves more frequently, but also because they never heard of it or saw it. So these are responses in Latin America, and you see, for example, 45% of women said they never heard or encountered, and 63% of men said they never encountered that. But then, for example, 24% of women said, yes, it happened to me, while a man was 3%. And then these are some qualitative responses. I'm going to show a little bit of them. These two are from Brazil. And so the role of mothers is very important, apparently in Latin America, to be able to succeed when you encounter difficulties. And this is again about mothers, supportive. So the very positive role model that mothers can exert on women who want to study a career in science, apparently. Anyway, so let me tell you that all these data now are available for people that are interested in analyzing them. You have to present a project, and in particular, those that come from Latin America go through my evaluation. And so as I told you, the International Science Council supported this through the end of 2019. But we were very happy working together with all these international unions. And so let me get out and go back. And we created this standing committee for gender equality in science. And we have 15 international unions. And I saw that IUMRS is about the funders of these meetings. So I was thinking that it would be great if this union joins the committee. And in particular, we expect that this committee will have a very important role for the celebrations that we expect to have during the International Year of Basic Sciences for Sustainable Development. So let's change the word. I mean, put it upside down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvina. Very good. So we have a lot of food for the brain here. And I would like to ask the participants if they're interested in asking questions or sharing experience, making comments, please raise your hand. Or you can also write your question in the chat if you don't feel comfortable turning on your microphone. Veronica and Monica are going to help me to check the messages. I think we already got a question, right, Veronica?
Yeah.
From Gloria.
There's a question from Gloria Bonder at YouTube. It was actually in Spanish, and Veronica translated it to English in the chat. Don't you think there are changes in stereotypes, for example, in toys, films, news about women in science? And this question was at the very early talk from Deborah.
Can I reply?
Sure.
Yeah, yes, I do, indeed. I remember that when my son was a child, there was already Mulan, who was this Chinese girl that was fighting as a man and things like that. There is certainly a change, and but I think it's very this is happening very slowly, and still there are this bulk of videos, still old ones that have been watched by children. So slowly by slowly things are changing. But concerning toys, I do not think so. If you go to a shop, at least in Brazil, they even ask you, is this present for a boy or a girl? Because if it's for a boy, we're going to wrap it with a certain kind of paper. If it's for a girl, it's all in pink with, you know, so this is very strong. And I do not think that it has been changing as it should have been when we talk about toys. So we see, I think it's a slow process, and I hope it works. Well, I'm talking. I would like to ask a question. Can I?
Of course.
To Sylvine. I was interested when she was showing her graphs about sexual harassment. Did you also study bullying or moral harassment?
No, not in this survey. No, it was the questions were about sexual harassment.
Because
well, actually, and the respondents, there was a fraction who were students, mostly, I would say, postgraduate students. It could be PhD or master or something. And so we were not addressing people who were at school. I mean, the responses that we got were mostly people working, but we didn't ask about bullying.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We have another question here from Maximiliano. He asks, is there any research that points towards actions to stop the harassment topic, or even some project that will give assistance, juridic assistance to the women that are harassed in case they want to take this, the complaints, you know, to justice?
Do you want me to answer? I don't know.
Because go ahead.
Okay.
Silvina.
So that's very much country, it depends on the country, because it's a legal issue. But for example, in Argentina, we almost all university, well, we have a very strong movement that started in 2015 that is called Ni Una Menos in Spanish, not a single one. Which was a very strong movement against femicides, so killing women because of gender. And so that prompted lots of institutions to change their policies. And there is a national law that has been passed that all public servants have to receive training anti-harassment and also against gender violence. And all universities and the National Research Council, they have specialized committees and protocols to handle all cases, and how you have to, what's the process that you have to go through, because you also need to give the person who is accused the chance to defend himself or herself. So, and there is also a confidentiality issue. So there are lots of things. There is interdisciplinary committees that give advice. People are trained, and then some of them can advise that you go into the legal system if you want to advance with some suing the person or something. At the international level, for example, from the IUPAP, we have an anti-harassment policy for conferences that are sponsored by IUPAP. So we request that the organizers appoint at least 2 people that are going to address if there is any problem during the conference. But then we cannot impose how to act in a particular country. So we can give an advice on what to do in the conference, but then there are legal issues that go at the national level, and there is no way that from the international sort of body we can rule or something. But we can try to promote a change of culture. That's what we try.
Good. So we're going to alternate between the chat and the hands raised here in the room. Yeda, would you like to ask something?
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. It's funny because when you said about the question of the girls, when I have an 11-year-old girl, and it's difficult to find clothes which are not pink and this sort of things. And yes, all the toys are for girls are kitchen things and so on. So unfortunately, we still have this difference. And it was very weird when we had the canal of Suez. The problem there was a fake news saying that the problem was caused by a woman. And we received these in the WhatsApp group. So it's very weird. I got very curious about the data that Silvina showed us, because it indicated that women in the United States and Canada and Europe, they have more the feeling of the prejudice against women, of discrimination against women. I asked myself if I really don't believe that in South America or in Asia or in Oceania, we have less discrimination against women. Maybe women don't realize when they are being discriminated. I would like to ask you to comment about this, if you think that my idea is right.
Yeah, I think
Just
that there
for
is an issue of awareness. We had this final meeting of the project, and we had a session where we discussed across the Americas. And so there was the difference between, it was people from the US, there was no one from Canada. So, but people from the US and people from Latin America. And I think that we informally reached the conclusion that maybe it was differences in awareness, that you don't recognize certain behaviors as a discriminatory behaviors, and that you're not aware, because at least I went through that, let me tell you. Like, after I started looking at all these problems, I looked back at my own life and started to recognize things that had gone completely unnoticed. So I think that awareness is very important. But we don't have data it's a feeling. I can tell you it's a hunch, but I'm not completely sure.
Very good. So now we have a question. Let me ask a question now from the chat that comes from, we have so many questions in the chat here. It's going really fast. From Matilde. Can you help me, Veronica? Are you? Oh, okay, here, Matilde. Professor Deborah Menezes mentioned mentorship as a way to help women and help changes to occur. Is there any mentorship programs that exist in Brazil specifically for young women in science? And I would like to add to this, maybe Marisa can also tell us if there is any mentorship program in her association after Professor Deborah can answer.
I'm not aware of any of these mentorship programs in Brazil, but there is this Supernova Foundation. I have even copied the link here, and it's open for Brazilians. And I have two students who have chosen to work with me through this program. So you can just go there, you enter into this link and you register yourself as a mentor or as a student, and then there is this connection. You can choose a mentor, you can choose a student. It's very nice. It's a nice platform, and then you were put in touch with the person through normally email, and then WhatsApp if you like, and then you keep talking to these young ladies. It's a very nice program, but it's an international program that Brazilians can use. And you can even use in Portuguese if you want to register and you were put in contact with your Portuguese mentees, then you can use everything in Portuguese. But I'm not aware of anything like that, any Brazilian program like that. But I recommend the Supernova Foundation for everyone. For Katamari, I'm sure she's going to be, there will be many girls looking for her, for instance. It's a very nice program.
Very good. Marisa, would you like to comment?
Sure. So we are struggling and trying to develop some formal mentorship types of programs through our society, but we do a lot of outreach into the schools with materials camps where we host these camps where kids can learn about materials, and teacher camps as well. And so through some of those programs, we're trying to get the mentoring going. Our society also has local chapters that are in different states and different cities within those states. And a lot of them are tied to a university. And so, and through those local chapters, there's a lot of connections between industry members and university students to help that mentorship and collaboration. But I wouldn't say we have a formal process, but there are different ways to do different connections and some more informal types of mentoring and connections.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a question to Katamari. How do you see the imposter syndrome worsening in Black students and their rise in academia? How do you see the imposter? Oh, okay, she repeats the question. So that's it, Katamari.
Andrea, she repeats the question for all of them. She rephrased the question.
Okay, how do you see the imposter syndrome worsening in students? But maybe Katamari could start.
Yeah, I think the idea of this concept of imposter syndrome, sometimes even for women, for white women and for Black students in general, it can be, people can think of imposter syndrome as the concept, but they're mistaken sexism or racism as imposter syndrome. So those things, they can mix, and then you're in a situation that because of sexism or because of racism or because the things combine, they put you in a situation that make you think less of yourself, and people make you think less of yourself, and then others may say, well, but you know about imposter syndrome, and maybe that's it. Yes, imposter syndrome is real, but there's also those other things that can be combined. So sometimes it's hard to detect what's imposter syndrome and what's a reflection of sexism and racism. So what I can say is that it just worsens the experience for minoritized groups in sciences.
Anybody else would like to comment on this? I believe I saw the hand of Cecilia up. Would you like to speak, Cecilia?
Yes, good night, good morning or good afternoon. So just would like to say that was a great panel, very inspired speeches. And I think this is a unique opportunity that you have to know and meet so many great women and learn about your experience. Something that I'm feeling is you already identify this gender inequality problems in our own institutions, and you are seeing this in our days, but I'm still feeling like a freeze about how I could change the culture in my workplace, yeah, because how you can change the culture of a department, how you can change the fact that you don't have a women's in the departments are very low represented. I'd like to know more from you, how you are fighting this in your own institution, something that you can hear from you and learn, and to help us to improve these situations in our own universities or companies that are working, because this for me is the challenge, how I can, after have all this knowledge and identify these big problem, how I can do something for changing this reality.
Is this a question for everyone?
Yeah, who feel free to answer. Thank you so much.
Okay. Who would like to start? Silvina, would you like to?
I can say something. So I think that dialogue and discussion at your institution is a very important thing. And so, for example, you could try to organize an activity, inviting, if you are feeling alone, you can try to invite someone from another institution that can give a talk, talking about these experiences. And there are different things that you can think of changing at your institutional level, organizational things like who takes care of different tasks, because task allocation many times is very much different depending on gender. So many times the tasks that are related to raising money or to something related to prestige in science are allocated to men, and women take care of more how to take care of the students, how to make the environment more amicable for people and stuff like that. And so there should be like some discussion on how you allocate tasks and maybe analyze how much time each one spends on different things. And then teaching is very important, because when you teach, if you address people differently depending on gender, or if the students behave differently depending on gender also, how to stimulate that everybody participates in a balanced way. And so it's like you have to reflect also on your own behavior and try to get other people to reflect on that. And there is something that I like very much, which is a scheme that was established in the UK for physics departments. It's called Juno Project. For other disciplines, is Athena Swan, is similar. And basically, it's a scheme in which institutions, they set up a list of goals, of objectives that to make the institution to increase equality in your gender equality in your institution. And so institutions have to apply for institutions have to say, I would like to reach those goals, and I'm planning to do this to reach those goals. And then this project Juno, for example, gives like an award to the institutions that propose to set up particular set of policies to reach those goals. It's like an evaluation scheme with site visits. But of course, you need a more like national organization or something, that's not something that you can do by yourself. But that kind of a scheme in which institutions can be evaluated and can discuss inside how to reach goals is very interesting. People that participated in this project Juno in the UK, they were saying that the internal discussion at the institution was the most important part of the evaluation, because it's awareness, as I said before, is super important. And so people have to become aware of the inequalities and have to be very conscious to change their behavior. And I think that can be changed through dialogue, and for the most part, then there is violence and stuff. But I mean that there is one part that you can try to work out through discussion and local activities.
Marisa, you come from a different environment than the academia, so would you like to comment on this also?
Sure. So we're definitely in a research environment in my lab, but it is a different type of dynamic. And one thing we just did at my work is we established a women's group and got the women together and said, what do we want to do? We want to promote ourselves and women in science and engineering. What can we do? And it started off as a pretty small group. There was like 5 of us maybe doing it, but started saying, hey, well, this person has a really good talk. Let's promote them. Because, you know, sometimes we have technical talks at our institution, but obviously there's more men, and so they get more of that. So we said, well, let's have this lady talk, or let's bring in this person. Let's do outreach on our own. And so started small. And so maybe you can do that at your group as well. Get the women that you have, or the women in minorities that you have, and start your own kind of foundational group to grow and build. And I completely agree that awareness is huge. Trying to put diversity and equity, inclusion at the forefront of all we're trying to do, and give your employer the benefits analysis. Why should they care? You know, there's tons of studies out there that show that having a diverse workforce is a benefit. It gets better productivity, better results, and that's a good thing for the institution. So how can you make that value to them and show that it's worth investing? And it's hard though, because sometimes, like we're talking, especially in my group, you know, there's a lot of people that we want to hire more women, we want to hire more minorities, but the applicants aren't there. So how do you make your institution more open and more welcoming to those types of applicants? What is your messaging that's going out into the community so that you can try to attract more of those applicants to get your diversity? And I think having, you know, foundational groups like the women's group that we're trying to do, and trying to advertise that more so that other women would see that and say, oh, I want to go work there. And same, you know, with minority groups and things like that. So those are some of the things we're trying to do at our workplace. And it starts from the ground up, I think, more than anything. There's a lot of the things, you know, like employers saying, yes, we want to do diversity. Yes, we want to do, but it seems kind of corporate, you know, because it comes down from that level and they're just trying to meet some number. So if you can try to show that value proposition and show that it really is something that the company values, not just a number that they're trying to meet. So those are my suggestions. It's a struggle. It's not easy.
Thank you so much.
Permanent struggle, indeed. Well, I have a question here from the YouTube, and then after this, we'll go to Maria Luz. So Natalia Tomasio from YouTube says, I noticed that people who join events that host discussions about diversity are mostly women or members of the other minority communities, which is unfortunately not enough to promote a real change. What strategies do you think can be effective in bringing people from the privileged group to attend these events and take action on promoting equity? Would you like to comment on this, Katamari?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's one of those things that when you have committees at the university, then, oh, okay, the diversity committee, then the diversity people are the ones that are going to be part of the committee. Then the work goes for the same people, and the problem, and no, that's not going to actually promote change, but it goes back to the advice that was just being told now, being given about what to do in our institution. So one of the things was to connect with others. And I think even if maybe there are other people that are not, you know, stakeholders maybe here, or that cannot promote changes, but here we have, because we have presidents of societies here, but in other places, not this particular venue. It's that we connect and we start to grow stronger. That's also important. So slower, this grows to other places and spaces. So it's also important, even if stakeholders are not here. So I think there are different levels of organizations and places for holding these conversations. That it's necessary to have these conversations in places where we have stakeholders, but it's also okay to have these conversations where they're not present. So it's a mix.
Right. Yeah. And I take this opportunity to ask Deborah if she has some strategy to include other people in these discussions who are not just us, because as Marisa pointed out, we need to do outreach in terms of education. And I believe we have to educate men, and that it's also important to support females in science, which is what we're interested in here. So my question is, do you have any strategies to include this, to make this discussion broader, not only to the interested group?
Well, we can trick them. Once I was in one of these general assemblies of the Brazilian Physical Society, and there were two meetings happening at the same time. This nuclear physics meeting and a meeting on particle physics. And then I wanted to show some data, and I wanted to discuss with everybody. Then I told the organizers, I'm going to do that during the General Assembly, but you do not say what I'm going to talk about. Then there were 300 people there, and then they couldn't leave, and I talked. And then it was a big surprise. And then now I'm a member of my university commission on diversity and equity. And we had to prepare this reception for the newcomers. And then I told them, it's a very good opportunity for us to talk about violent reception that we in Brazil called trote, and also to talk about harassment and discuss this discussion. So we had this huge reception online that the students had to attend. And then there were thousands of students. And then we talked. So they were tricked into listening to that. And then we were talking for boys who are 17, 18 years old, and they are just entering a new environment. I think the reception was so impressive, because then we got we have a specific email, and then we received lots of messages from the boys. So I don't really know how to address this subject and tell the men and the boys to white men and white boys to come. But if they are tricked into coming, many of them do listen. So I don't know if it's a good strategy, but I think it works.
Very good.
We did something similar. We did for one of our webinars, we called it something different. I think it was something like how to create a welcoming workplace, which who doesn't want that? But then dived into a lot of the difficulties that women face in the workplace and other minorities and things. So kind of did that same thing of the trick, with the title and the subject. But I would also say, scrolling through the attendees here, it seems like there's several males that are here, and that's a good thing. So take advantage of it. While you might not have your entire, stakeholder group, like Katamari was saying, you do have some people here, and they're your allies. They're here for a reason. And so take advantage of that. Offer them to come in, bring another person with them, take it. They're here for a reason, and they're on your side. So try to take advantage of that too, and ask them who else they know. Are there other women that are they professors? Are there other mentors? Are they students? Do they have other friends that are struggling? Use them as outreach too, because they're here. So
very good. Yeah. So only women can come up with these creative solutions, right? Maria Luz, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. In fact, it was not a question. I just wanted to share something that happened in my life. That is, I am a mother since I was 21. My biggest son is 21 now, almost 22. I have 2 more kids. And I had a lot of luck. I was very lucky during my career. I could do all of it. But something that happened is that many times I felt guilty about what I was doing. about kids that were not with me, were at a double hour at school. And I think that is a question of education. No? If kids are educated in a different way nowadays, probably they won't feel guilty when they are big. So I don't know. I think the question of education, of choice, what happens at school, it's very, very important. And I wanted to share this because I really felt it during almost my whole life. So that's it.
Thank you, Luz, for sharing this experience. Yeah. Would anybody like to comment on this or share something similar?
I think it's the mom guilt is real. I'll tell you that. I know mom guilt is hard. I don't know. It's something we got to battle with the, like the toys and the, that binary thing that comes so early. My daughter is 3 and she already says, pink is for girls, blue is for boys. I'm like, where are you getting that? So it's something that has to start small and, when they're really young, and just keep trying to say, no, this is for anybody and this can be for everybody. And, she has a little science kit and she loves doing science, but she started saying a little bit something about, oh, numbers are for boys. I'm like, no, so just keep fighting it and raising good people, like you said, you're trying to raise your boys and, it's a struggle. And I think if we start as small as they can and raise good people.
Yeah, very interesting point. Yeah. Deborah?
Yes, I would like to say that I think education works very well if we do that when they are young children, because it has worked very well with my son. His girlfriend is the most feminist I've ever seen in my life. So if they listen about that, about being, about all those, about equity, about avoiding differences, and if we really make these points part of the daily life, they just incorporate that. So I think this is the point. And many women are responsible for educating boys alone. So that's the point. I think it's a struggle, but there is a solution, and education is the solution. And then we keep trying all those things, but education is the key point. And I do think it works.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you.
I want to say something.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't think well, it's something that you cannot control, feeling guilty, I guess. But it's not that something that you abandoned your kids. You were pursuing your career and taking care of them at the same time. So you were a role model. You are for them, I think, because you've been showing that you could pursue your passion for science at the same time as raising kids. And so I think that's very important. And well, we don't know how to be parents. We learn on the way. And so we make mistakes. We are not perfect. But if we give love, kids understand, I think. So, and well, I have a son who is much older than Maria Luz's son. And he chose physics, even though because of physics, we moved around, we changed countries, we changed cultures, we changed schools, never had vacation for many years in a row, that we would go to work in the summer of the Southern Hemisphere to go work in the Northern Hemisphere and stuff like that. And still he chose physics, so I don't know. At that time, I just dropped all my guilt. Anyway.
Very good. So you must have done a good job. See?
I don't know. Anyway.
Very good. Yeda, would you like to comment?
Yeah, just I'm not a panelist, but I'd like to share my situations. Okay, my experience. I have a 17-year-old boy, And once he was talking, when he was around 12 years old, he was talking to some boys, and they started saying bad things about girls. And he started to say, no, you are wrong. This is not like this. And then the boys said to him, oh, you are a feminist. And he said, yes, I am a feminist. I have a sister, I have a mother, and I am a feminist. And I always worked a lot, academic life, just like most of you. And I always had to leave him with somebody to help me. And fortunately, I have a cooperative husband. We work together at home. We work together with the kids and so on. And what I can say is that I don't think he's always saying, oh, we're not here when I needed you. No, I don't feel that. On the opposite, I think he is proud of me. He likes to tell his colleagues that his mother is a scientist, and he's proud of it. So send this guilt away. You are giving your kids an example of how being different. And my mother was a feminist, and I remember my colleagues telling me that when they started having kids, they said, oh, I have to work and I have to leave my kids. And then they said, no, wait. Ieda's mother, she always worked out of home. She always had her career, and it was okay. It was never a problem for Ieda. And so it was an example for my friends when I was a teenager. So I believe that we are making a different world by giving an example and by creating feminist boys. I really believe in that. And yes, girls today are much more feminists than we were when we were girls. My little girl, once she was hearing Chico Buarque and a music that I really love, Feijoada Completa. And then she said, why he keeps asking her to do everything? Why she has to make everything for him? Why doesn't he go there and does what he wants her to do? And yes, very good. Girls are getting feminists. We can change the world.
Thanks for that, Ieda. Yeah, so we have a comment from Talita in the chat, and she says, recently, FAPESP, which is the financing agency of the state of São Paulo, released a new curriculum summary model that seeks to favor gender equity. The orientation is for the researcher responsible for the project to report in the other biographical information field any career interruptions resulting from medical leaves, including maternity or paternity leave, or the need to care for others, such as a sick family member, people with disabilities, or elderly. We know that in poor countries, women take on the role of caregiver, not only of their own children, but also of the elderly and infirm parents. The comments of my male colleagues when reading the article, quotation, I don't care what the person goes through, but productivity. Women are already productive in this institution. Now productivity will increase, as if we were privileged. Clearly, just putting information on the resume will not change the picture. In the short term, what could funding agencies do other than recommend adding information to the curriculum? Because men's education, especially in an extremely sexist country, will take many years to change. So who would like to comment on this?
Well, I know, for example, that there is another project that is very interesting, which is the National Science Foundation Advanced Project. It's a line of funding in the US for institutions to change, and I mean for institutional changes to make it more equitable from the point of view of gender. Institutions can apply for this line of funding to devise new policies or to adapt policies that exist in other institutions to their own environment, or to collaborate with other institutions. And the University of Colorado, I think they have something that is called strategic tools, that you could go and see what, I mean, like a collection of the policies that have been implemented in different universities. And there they talk about a training of all decision makers at institutions. Like if you are a person that is going to make decisions on who you're going to hire, or people that are in charge of the institution at different levels, that they have to go through some mandatory training to reduce their biases, for example, to become more aware of the biases that you could have and how you might, unconsciously make it more difficult for women than, or for certain groups than for the other groups. And then there are also for committees, hiring committees, promotion committees, also like before they start doing their job of analyzing resumes and stuff like that, they go through some sessions, like practice sessions, where they look at cases where they can discuss about whether there could be biases in the assessment and stuff like that. And then there are also mentoring schemes for people to go through their promotion, advancement of careers, and watchdogs that look at how you allocate tasks and stuff like that. So there is a bunch of initiatives that you can get inspiration from to try to change the institution. Yeah.
Deborah, do you have a word on this?
Yes, I would like to tell Talita that this is more than just filling any specific space on the CV, because this also, I don't know if you were aware, but there is a group in Rio Grande do Sul called Parents in Science, and the leader of the group, I think her name is Fernanda Staniascu or something like that. And they fought for this specific field on the Lattes CV for many years. And that's because this helps with data and with analyzing results, and just to see how many women have children and keep working, or if they just give up and things like that. So these specific fields are indeed very important. They are more important than just one item added to the CV. And I think that besides that, sponsoring bodies in Brazil have been improving on the way they face maternity, for instance. So now scholarships are, people who have scholarships during their doctorates and have children, they have their scholarship extended for a certain period. So it's not the ideal situation, but it's getting better. And I do think that these specific fields are really important, and they are just not something you fill out or not. Of course, some people don't want to add that, but I think it's important. Many more things have to be done. So we have to work slowly by slowly, and we also have to propose things to help the situation to get better for the younger generation. And I think it's getting better. It's better than when I had children, for instance. I think that Andrea already had a better life than I did, and so on and so forth. So it's a struggle, as somebody has already said here.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very important step to be able to share that information. And
Can
now,
I add one more thing real quick to that? Sorry. So one thing that our professional society is just now trying to make a change to is our wording and our criteria for our different awards. I don't know if you all have different awards for achievements and all that, but a lot of it was very age-based. So you had to be so many number of years past your degree for X or for this or that. And that was very exclusive to people that had extended maternity leave, had to go on leave for caregiving for elders, had a disruption or like changed their careers, went back to school later in life. And so we are changing the criteria for our awards to help accommodate those life changes and issues that come up, so that it is more welcoming for a mom that,
went to school, then had kids, then came back to the workplace. She can still be considered early career because she hasn't, she's just now getting going, or somebody that, had to take off to take care of elderly parents and things like that. So that could be something you all could look at as well too, to make your society more open to people with those different life road paths. So.
Very good, yeah. We have a question from Silvana Rodrigues Alves from YouTube, which is, what advice can you give to the ones who are starting at academic life, but don't feel capable of success in this area? And then I would like to ask Katamari if she can give us some insight on this. Katamari, in the beginning of your career, have you ever had any uncertainty or insecurity, thinking that, I may not succeed in what I am pursuing? Could you comment on this, either your experience or those experience of people who you work with?
I think I would turn the question back and ask, what is success? What is she thinking about success? I don't know whether, I don't think I thought about success, so I was doing my things. I really enjoy, I really was into like doing lists, so solving problems. And then at some point I fell in love with philosophy of science, and I was like, I want to study that. And then I started, okay, where can I study that? And I found a university where I could study that. And then I moved there and I studied that. And after that, so I did that my entire life. I was just moving, going where I could study what I was passionate about. And that's what I was doing. And also after my PhD, then I was like, okay, where can I work doing what I like doing? And then I did that. But people also have to like survive and eat and need money for those things. And I worked with so many different things. I managed to work, and I sold things. I was, one of those people who sell everything that you can imagine. I was one of those people. So when I was in undergrad, I sold several things. I worked in very different positions. So I always worked through undergrad. And then I also worked in the university, positions at the university. And then when I was a graduate student as well, I had scholarships. So I managed to do things I was passionate about and things that I need to do to survive. And I didn't think about success. So, and it's still like that today in a way. And it's interesting because in my PhD, I studied about successful Black women physicists. That's in the title of the dissertation. And later, like recently, I wrote this paper with my former advisor where we rethink about success. And I say that I don't think anymore about success as I did in my PhD, as being someone, we defined at the time, as someone who had a PhD in physics. And it's like, but why is that success? So there is a whole discussion about that, and that's not the point here, but I would invite, sorry, what's her name that I missed? But I would invite her to ask what success is.
The lady from the YouTube. If you want to write
Silvana Rodrigues Alves.
Yeah,
okay.
If you want to.
So Silvana, yeah, I would just think what success is, because, there's this saying that is also rooted in racism and capitalism and colonialism, that is about money. After all, like, it's money and power. So that's success. That's what we are going to. And that's also the metrics we have in academia. So all those things, all these awards, all these papers we have to publish because we need grants, because we need lots of money. It's not just because we need money to do our research. We need this money and to publish all this, because otherwise we cannot do the things we're passionate about. So it all goes around this capitalist and power ideas. So just think about what success is for you. Maybe you're good already, just don't take other people's idea of success and just think what you want and you'll be good.
Yeah, and then still on this topic, I would like to combine here a comment and a question, because Yasmin said, I felt incapable the entire time during my academic career. And then Matilde complements and she says, do men used to feel the same, or is it more of a female problem? So what do you think? Do you think this is particularly a problem of women, that they tend to feel, incapable or insecure? Deborah, could you comment on this?
Yes, actually, I was typing about that. I think that men also feel insecure. In physics, if you teach, for instance, electrodynamics, and you ask a question, nobody answers. And if you ask, do you know why this is happening? Can you explain? Nobody says anything. But if one asks a question, then you see that nobody has understood. And I think it's more difficult for men to admit they don't know or that they are not capable of doing something than for women. And I was writing here that once a student told me during my class, you are the only teacher here that says, I don't know when we ask something. So probably my colleagues would never admit in class that they don't know something, which is very common to happen. It's so common that a student asks a question that's not related exactly to what we do and we don't know the answer. So why not say that? So, but I think there is this imposter syndrome, probably affects more women than men, or at least we are more aware of that because women say so and men don't. But I do think they feel insecure sometimes, and they also feel that they are not capable of doing things, even if they do not admit it.
Oh yeah, we have already a manifestation here from a man. He says, I do feel insecure sometimes. Maximiliano shared this input with us. Okay. Monica, would you like to talk?
Yeah, if I can. Just to add, I was writing it. Silvana is my student, so she said, because I have this feeling that because of my gender, I always need to do more. Well, from my almost 30 years experience in physics institute, where we are like less than 10% of women faculty, I see that I was studying the confidence code because I saw that in more a research-like thing. We have to consider a lot of things. Our biological evolution, women were hardwired, our brain are hardwired for more social connection, for being more useful, because, in the caves, we tended the children, the elderly, and so on. So we cannot escape our biology. So this is hardwired in our brain. We have automatic behaviors that we have to fight all the time. So also there's a social construct, and I won't do like Katamari because I didn't study all this. It's just reading books and in general, but there's a social construct where we're fighting all the time. So I remember always the questions. Oh, you got in the undergrad, you're going to university, what you're gonna do when you're getting your PhD, when you're getting married, when you're getting a boyfriend, when you're getting kids, so there's a lot of pushing around because the society wants to keep your role. So every time you're moving away with it, you might feel guilty, or you might feel like you're not doing your role properly. So there are a lot of things going on inside women. My experience with men in academics is that they don't care. They just say whatever it is. They don't know. I know sometimes during a talk, that a colleague doesn't know the answer, but they say anything. I would say exactly like Deborah. I say, I don't know. Maybe this is a good question, we have to discuss and so on. But I've seen this so many times, men, just because that's the way they are raised. Again, the social construct comes along. They are not supposed to show insecurity. They're not supposed to show feelings. It's awful for men, I admit, but I think all those things come together, and the academics brings a extra, a layer in the cake, if you like, because then you have this environment which is really different from society. So it is a struggle, as you said, but you have to remember, we also had our neuroscience is explaining a lot. Like when Deborah cited that science paper, I saw it the same week it was released, about this impact on young girls. And if you look, there are a lot of research going on showing that. So we have to fight all the time against something that sometimes is hardwired in our brain. So we have to be aware all the time, okay? And imposter syndrome, I think it's much more prevalent in women than men. Well, sorry, I didn't add much, but it's just, some thoughts for the discussion.
Absolutely. Now we have an interesting point of view here from Maximiliano. He says, I think this difficulty of men admitting being incapable of doing something kind of picks up on the social pressure which often exists of men having to be the provider of the family. So showing yourself incapable of doing something is kind of admitting that you may be failing in having to provide. So it's pure insecurity, he says. Would you like to comment on that, ladies?
I think just as women fall into the same societal pressures, men have that too. I would argue with the response that was put in the chat. I don't think all men are afraid of women's success. I think that's a pretty gross generalization. That it's definitely true of some men, but not all men. And I would argue the ones that are here in this chat are not one of them. But I think there are societal pressures on both sides. It's, I think, more prominent with women, and the ones for men are more accepted, I think. So.
Yeah, I share your opinion as well.
Yeah, well,
okay.
There are also many studies of new masculinities and institutes of new masculinities. I think it's an important aspect, because it's actually what we are after is a cultural change, basically. And it's connected to what Katamari was saying, what success. So what gives prestige? When we started doing these career development workshops with my Mexican colleague Lilia Mesa, we were thinking, well, we will try to empower young women and stuff like that. And then we realized we don't want that, because that would mean reproducing the current situation, the status quo. We don't want that. We want to change it. We want to change the environment of the ecosystem, what I call the scientific ecosystem, to change its culture, to change what is associated to prestige, and to value different aspects. And everybody has to be be part of that cultural change, I think.
Katamari?
I just wanted to go back a little and to also say that, because I was saying that I did things that I was passionate about, but I think it also happens, and that kind of connects to what Silvina is talking. It helps because I have also studied about culture and about all those theoretical lenses I have been talking. So understanding culture and understanding how some structures in society works make me feel sometimes less pressure in some ways. So I understand that's not about me. It's things people project and the society expects, but it's not about me. So I think that helps because it shifts how the expectation. So it's not that I'm not being able, I'm not going to make it. It's, I don't have to do this. So it's a change of perspective on how you see the way you interact with your work. So I just wanted to say that to Silvana, because so I totally understand how you feel, and I think it's completely valid. I think that for me it's different, especially now because I have been studying those things. So it helps me interact differently and navigate differently in those spaces. But that's what the structure does, makes you feel oppressed, makes you feel like you are wrong, you are doing things wrong, you're not enough in this space. But you are, and you don't have to know everything. As Deborah was saying, you can say you don't know things, and it's okay, it's fine.
Yeah, very good. Any more questions? Somebody else would like to share some experience? Or as we wait for more questions, I would like to do kind of a provocation here and change topic a little bit, talk about research. A couple of weeks ago, I watched the talk from the Nobel Prize winner, what's his name? Stephen Hell. He was responsible for the high resolution fluorescence microscopy. And then I asked him what were his views on gender, on female participation in science, and what was his experience having worked or collaborated with women. And his answer kind of saddened me, because he said, I have worked with several students, female students, and I did everything possible to support them in all the needs they had, because they do have special needs of supporting, so that they can carry on their PhD or whatever. But when it comes to the very high-end research, and we're talking about Nobel Prize research, né? When it comes to the high-end research, he says, they just don't make it. I'm sorry to say this. He says, I know that you don't want to hear me saying this, but this is what it is. This is what I have observed along all these years in my career. Eventually they drop off, they make choices, family, having children, whatever. And I was a little depressed to hear that. And of course, this is a provocation. I would like to hear you talking about this. Are we fighting a lost battle, or do you totally disagree? Can we make it there, or is this kind of a fate of women? Again, it's not my belief, it's a provocation. Deborah, could you start?
Yeah, I think I'm reading here a question that it was exactly what I was going to ask. How old is he?
The Stefan, I don't know, I would guess 60 highs.
Yeah, maybe this is a point. Maybe this is the way he sees things, and maybe that's the women with whom he collaborated in the past. So I don't see it that way, but I've never won the Nobel Prize. I don't think I will be laureated with the Nobel Prize. But I think that's a way of saying that women are not capable. And there are many other things that we've been discussing around, like all these effects that point towards the fact that women indeed can do whatever they want, but there are many difficulties along the way that they have to surpass, that maybe not many of them reach the Nobel Prize. But even if you look at those studies, one of the studies that I've shown, that is that there are biases on this decision of the Nobel Prize winners. So I don't know. I would like to say that I don't believe that this is true. But
I don't either. Monica?
You want to go around, but the panelists? No, I just added these spurious correlation sites, which I always cite when people start doing things. But my point, if I were there, I would tell Dr. Howell that maybe that's because of his experience with a couple of ladies in the past and that things have changed. But if he keeps saying that nowadays, it won't help the situation. So if you see a Nobel Prize saying this to a young girl, to a young student, what effect would it have on her? So I think, you have to call their attention, even though it's their experience, because, in the past or that happened. And that brings us to the pandemic. We forgot the pandemic in the discussion, but like the pandemic, when people say, in my experience, chloroquine works, or ivermectin, Maria said that I know is ramping through the US now. So this is adding personal experience. He's a scientist, for God's sake. So he has to look at the reality and see, okay, if I say that, I'm pushing towards the thing. So I think it's completely, I'm sorry, I was really disappointed by what you said from a guy who is in a position to call attention. He could say that. He could say the same thing, Andrea. He could say, yes, unfortunately, my personal experience, the people I collaborated with didn't make it, but I'm pretty sure that things are changing and things like that. So it doesn't make any sense when a guy like this say that. It's like the Harvard dean, remember? The one that was expelled because he said women could produce, but sorry, just a comment.
Yeah, before I pass on to you, Marisa, I'd just like to compliment that he was very careful at answering this question, and he says it's not an opinion, but I'm stating the fact based on my observations along the career. So, Marisa?
I would just put back to him of why, why are these women having to leave? I doubt that they want to necessarily, maybe some do, but is he somewhat blind to the systematic institution that's set up to that don't allow women to succeed as high as men? What else is in there that is preventing the women from actually succeeding and make it all the way? I doubt it's their intellectual capacity. I think it's the system. And how can we help change that? I think that's part of the whole discussion we're having here.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you. Katamari?
I think there are, maybe three points, I guess, I wanted to mention. One is that we have sometimes this idea that because the person is a Nobel Prize winner, so they are really, really smart and they know everything or about everything. And this is clearly a comment that is very stupid. And the second point is, I don't think this deserve any attention, really. And I would say, if this question was if this comment was different, and if he said that a Black person cannot, no matter what, so Black people, they don't get Nobel Prize. They don't. You can talk whatever you want, but Black people, at the end of the day, they cannot get it. The discussion wouldn't be it's like, okay, he's from another time, or it's because it's the people he lived with, or it's from his experience. No, it would be clearly a racist comment. So it's clearly a sexist comment. There is no way around it. So we need to call things what they are. And this is protecting sexist people. He made a sexist comment, and that's what it is. We don't need to give any consideration to this comment at all, and to this person, I think. So that's one thing we need to stop doing, is to try to, to hedge things and to be like protective of what we say, and we need to be very careful and call things what they are.
Right.
It's not us that we need to be ashamed of calling someone sexist when they're doing a sexist thing, or racist when they're doing racist things, saying racist things.
True. Silvina, would you like to
Yeah,
comment
well,
also?
I think it's also related to the idea that there is a unique standard for doing science, and that people have to accommodate to that way of doing science, which is not via research. It's all the social aspects. Like, for example, I have a friend with whom we've been organizing these workshops, Alba, who Katamari met in Sao Paulo from Colombia. And Alba, she said she did her PhD in the UK, in Cambridge, and they had like a contest of who would stay the longest at the lab without going back home. And so they would put it in a board, like with a sign, I stayed 2 days, whatever, and completely workaholic. And so that's the way that it was supposed to be, the way that you had to do science. And that's the thing that has to be challenged, I think, and make the practice of science more human, basically. And so that's what, but some people have that so much into their own perception and beliefs that they cannot think of another way. And so if you don't accommodate to that scheme, then you cannot go on. There is a lot of pressure and you have to quit. And so I think that what we have to change is that idea that there is a unique way, and that there is a unique standard with which you build prestige, you earn prizes and stuff like that. I think you should embrace diversity also in the way that science is done.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have a comment from Yasmin Bastos in the chat. She says, I find it so curious that having a family is a choice only for women, but being a father or a husband isn't a factor towards men failing or becoming less successful. Because for straight couples, which are the majority, it's a two-people choice, I would think. Anybody would like to comment on this? Marisa, do you have a word on this? It takes two, right?
Well, I mean, so I don't know if you can hear a little bit what's going on right now. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you all doing my, I guess we'll call it my job, while my husband's taking care of the kid and cooking dinner. So I think it's something we gotta fight against, that it's a societal norm right now that has to change, you know? Last time I checked, for the most part, if you're in a heterosexual couple, both people are involved. It's not just one.
Yeah.
It's something that has to change. And I'm tired of hearing all about it. I get questions all the time. I get them. When are you having another kid? My husband doesn't get those questions. It's like, I'm pretty sure he has to help with this, you know, so it's something has to change, and I'm tired of hearing it. And so how can we, and I think like Katamari was saying, when you hear it, fight back against it. Say, well, my husband can do that, or the males are doing that. They're just responsible for their kids too. They got to go pick them up, do whatever, fight, you know, point it out, bring it up, bring the awareness. That's what we have to do to help to start making a change.
Oh, yeah. I remember quite well the many times when I was attending conferences by myself, and then people would ask, what about your husband? And then I would say, well, he's home taking care of the children. And then they would say, oh, doesn't he mind that you travel so much on your own to conferences? I said, not at all. Somebody needs to stay home and take care for the children, right? So it takes two. Anybody else would like to comment on this?
I think it's changing with new generations. I see a change with newer generations, plus different types of families as well, not the standard heterosexual couple and stuff like that. So it's lots of changes, I think. And I think new generations are more open to diversity. That's what my feeling, but maybe it's in a particular setting. But then there are things, but we were talking about biology, and if you breastfeed, and also if you carried through your pregnancy, then there are changes in your body that affect you for many years. And so it's not that you just deliver and that's it. It's not in your body. There are lots of changes plus breastfeeding. And that's a difference, I think.
Deborah?
Yes, I just would like to make a comment about what you said. I remember that once I was just finishing my PhD, and at the time we didn't use our first names when publishing papers. So this has changed as well. Now people look at the paper and they know that the first name may be a female name. It didn't happen 30 years ago. And then I had just finished my PhD. I was studying at Oxford, and I was invited to give a talk in Chicago. And I went there. And when I was registering at the hotel, then the guy, one of the organizers of the conference, arrived and looked and said, "Ah, Mrs. Menezes, nice to meet you. Where is your husband?" And I told him, "Oh, my husband's back in England because he's finishing his master's degree." And then the guy looked at me and said, "Oh, I saw that." He panicked. Then at that moment, he realized he had invited a woman. And you see, it was really something, he couldn't say anything. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, I have to go somewhere else." And you see, and then I realized, well, I think that this is not going to happen anymore, because nowadays the papers come with full names. So this is already something very small that has made probably a big change.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Monica, would you like to add?
Yeah, I agree with Silvina that the younger generation is smarter, because I think we are helping a bit, but there are always this kind of thing. I was in the airport, we were waiting some connection with our kids. Our kids are grown up, right? And we went to the lounge. And then my husband, I was with the kids, we just staying at the door, and my husband went there and said, "Can we use the lounge?" And he gave him, he had a, priority access. We had access to the lounge. He just went to ask. And then the lady who was at the counter look at us three and say, "Oh, but you can only take one guest." And then I took my passing board and say, "I have the same priority as he has. I also have access. So we have two kids, each one with one." And then I look at her and say, "Can you tell me why you assumed that he was the only one with priority board?" And she looked at me, she blanked, because this is all the time. People make assumptions based on social constructs. And so that's my point. We have to be aware of this and make a point, even if it's, people are telling, "Oh, you're a hysterical woman," because the girls who are saying this and the boys who are saying this have to be confronted with this day-to-day, how do you call, microaggressions that we feel. So I think we have to be aware of that. And I was only aware when I was in US at Bell Labs, and a Brazilian friend, she told me, I got a job offer in Bell Labs at the time. And a Brazilian friend who worked there, she said, "You need to see the environment here." So she took me to the women's minority group. And that was in the 90s. So the point is, I was so scared. I said, well, Bell Labs was Gladsey at that time, but I was so scared because of a meeting with Bill Brinkman, who was the director of Bell Labs. He came to this meeting with all women from Bell Labs. And Bell Labs was still Bell Labs at the time, right? And he came completely unprepared. They had like a lot of questions that they sent him a couple of months before. It was a very important meeting. And he came completely unprepared. He said he didn't receive any questions. If they want to talk to him, he would talk. And one moment he said something like that, oh, but we all know that women work less than men. And the 300 women were like kind of silent. How? Oh, because you get kids. So I'm just telling these examples to see how different these digressions are. You could be a director of a very important research center, or it could be the lady at the counter. But we have to be aware of these aggressions every day, and we have to step up, not for us, but for the younger generations. And I think we did that already a lot, because I see these improvements that Silvina mentioned. You know, it's not widespread because, although, again, we're talking about our bubble. If you look in Brazil, for example, at lower levels, more vulnerable social segments, this is not as much prevalent. So it is a conflict that we have to fight and be aware all the time. I was only aware the first time because a friend of mine, she called me and said, what is happening here? Have you ever been, felt bias against you? No, I didn't. But then when you start to recount the situations you went through, don't you think this could be a bias against you because you're a woman? And then I start to realize, and I saw all the things unveiling. So we need to, push this awareness in every situation. Okay.
I fully agree with you, Monica, because I have to say it took me time to identify situations I've been through of prejudice that I wasn't even aware, because I was a chemist working in a physics department in a very competitive institute. And I've been through several challenges, of course, but I always took it to be normal, like the way I was treated or the way my colleagues would address me. And then nowadays, when I am already in some middle stage of the career and have more experience, then I look back and only now I recognize situations. So indeed, I wasn't aware. And I think this awareness has risen quite a bit in the past 20 years. So very important. Do we have any more questions or comments? We have 4 minutes to go, and I'm sure we could talk for a long time.
There may be a final statement for motivating our young students from our panelists, or I don't know how to call them, but for women invited here. Maybe some motivation, statement for our students.
Very good. Yeah. So, would you like to say something, dear invited speakers?
For the young generations?
Yeah. Final message?
I guess that if they are attending these activity is already a good sign. So they are worried about discrimination and bias, and it's something that you have to not only look at others, but also at yourself, your own actions, and try to exert change, and a positive change, and try to open up your mind and accept different things. So, but I think that with the new generations, I am very hopeful that things will change, really. I feel that they are much more open-minded. Plus, they have a lot of challenges that we are leaving them with, like climate change and stuff like that. So I hope that they can manage. I'm very, hopeful.
Thank you, Silvina. Arisa, would you like to give a final message?
Sure. I'm inspired too with just, I guess it's good to know you're not alone, and that across the globe, we still have some of the same issues, and we're in this together. I think for the younger generation, keep bringing awareness, keep trying to educate yourself as well. I really like what Katamari said about what is your definition of success? Because I feel like too, like I'm not succeeding because my career doesn't look like this person's. But then if you really critically think about it, is that what you want? you know. So I think keep bringing awareness to the issues, keep challenging people, keep asking why does it have to be that way, and really think about what you want for your career and your path. That's what I would do.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Katamari?
Well, I guess thanks for being here. We're still during this pandemic, so thanks for being online here. I know it's hard for everyone, and you're all still here. And I hope we can meet at some point in person, and that in, I don't know, perhaps next year, you can have this event and meet all these women or other women in the event and keep growing this community in the material sciences.
Thank you, Katamari. Deborah?
Well, just thank you very much for the invitation. It was very nice to listen to you all. And on behalf of the Brazilian Physical Society, I'd like to say that we are all ears. And if you have ideas, suggestions, things that we can do to improve this situation, we will try to do it. So thank you for your company. Thanks for the invitation, and hope to see you sometime and drink some real coffee, have some real chat.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Okay, we have 9 o'clock punctually. So I would like to suggest all of us maybe turn on our videos, and maybe we can take some prints of the screen. Veronica, could you help us with that? This would be nice, a nice remembrance of this event. Thank you so much for your attendance.
Yes, I think it's a very good idea, but I don't have the total view. I don't know if maybe Monica has.
I think we have to do several. I think we have to take
several. Yeah,
okay.
Then we put together. We stick.
So let me set here my screen, because I have two screens. Okay. Okay, we can take the photo, the first one. It will take some seconds, okay? Because there are many photos to do.
Some people are still turning on the videos, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Maximiliano, good to see you.
All right.
Okay, the first one. Have to save here. Another one. Well, some people are with their camera. Okay.
Yeah, they're shy. That's all right.
Yeah. Okay.
I took some myself, so in case it doesn't work.
It's done. Okay.
Very good. A round of applause. Thank you so much for